Hey everyone, and welcome. Today we're going to dive deep into the wild world of global business strategy. And we're going to do it through the story of one single iconic brand, Benetton. It is an absolutely fascinating tale of genius innovation, jaw-dropping controversy, and some really big lessons for any company that wants to go global. All right, let's get into it.
So imagine you're a company and you're ready to expand internationally. You immediately run into this massive question. Do you standardize, meaning you offer the exact same product everywhere to build one consistent global brand? Or do you adapt? Do you change your products, your marketing, even your stores to fit the local culture in every single country you enter? It really is the ultimate global question. Now, you'd think the answer is just a gut feeling or a roll of the dice, right? Well, not exactly. The smartest strategists don't just guess. They use a really powerful framework to figure out how global an industry actually is, which helps them make that critical call: standardize or adapt. And here it is. This is the framework we're talking about. It's built around four key forces that really determine an industry's potential for globalization. If you can analyze these forces correctly, you can make a much smarter decision about how to expand. So let's break them down one by one.
First up, you've got market forces. This one is all about the customer. You have to ask, are people in Tokyo, New York, and Rome all looking for the same thing? Do they buy stuff in the same kinds of stores? If the answer is a big yes, then the potential for a standardized one-size-fits-all approach is really high. Next, we have cost forces. Think of this as the money part of the puzzle. Can you save a fortune by making everything in one giant centralized factory? Are labor costs way cheaper in one part of the world? You know, if centralizing gives you a huge cost advantage, that's a massive push towards a more globalized strategy. Third, there are the competitive forces. You've got to ask, who are we actually up against here? Are we fighting the same handful of big global companies everywhere we go? Or is every country a totally unique battlefield with its own local champions? If the competition looks the same everywhere, a single global strategy is a whole lot easier to pull off. And finally, number 4. Government forces. These are basically the rules of the game. We're talking about trade policies, taxes, regulations, technical standards, all that stuff. If countries have pretty open and similar policies, going global is smoother. But if every market is a maze of different rules and red tape, well, you're gonna have to adapt. Okay, so now that we've got the framework down, let's get back to our case study, because for a while there, Benetton wasn't just playing the game, they were totally mastering it, especially when it came to those powerful cost forces. See, back in the 1970s, Benetton was getting ready to completely turn the clothing industry on its head. They weren't just making colorful sweaters, they were fundamentally reinventing how you could make them, and it gave them an unbelievable edge. Okay, so check this out, because this process was just brilliant in its simplicity. Most companies would dye the yarn, then knit the sweater. Benetton flipped it. They made thousands and thousands of plain, undyed, neutral-colored sweaters. Then they just sat back and watched the sales data. Is bright red selling like crazy in Milan? Great. They just grab some of those neutral sweaters, dye them red, and have them in the store in about 2 weeks. Genius. This quote just nails the strategy perfectly. It was all about speed and flexibility. They almost totally wiped out the risk of getting stuck with a warehouse full of sweaters in a color nobody wanted that season. I mean, this was an absolute masterclass in using those cost forces, keeping inventory low, turnover high, and being incredibly responsive to the market. So they've got their production totally dialed in. It's a well-oiled machine. What's next? Branding. And oh boy, this is where the story takes a very sharp, and for a lot of people, a very shocking turn. They basically decided to stop selling clothes and start selling a worldview. And the architect of this whole shift was this photographer, Oliviero Toscani. He somehow convinced the Benetton family that their ads shouldn't even show their products. Instead, they should sell a big idea. And that big idea became United Colors of Benetton. At first, it was this really powerful celebration of multiculturalism, using these beautiful photos of kids from all different backgrounds. But it didn't stay there. The campaign evolved from talking about unity to diving headfirst into deeply provocative social commentary. The ads started showing images that had absolutely nothing to do with clothing. We're talking about a real-life photo of an AIDS patient on his deathbed, or this incredibly stark image of an electric chair. The only thing connecting it to the brand was that little green United Colors of Benetton logo. It definitely got attention, but it also sparked just a massive amount of global outrage. So while the brand is making all these headlines around the globe, there was some serious trouble brewing in what was, and still is, the single most important consumer market in the world, the United States. That strategy that worked so well in Europe, it was about to smack right into a brick wall. Just look at this number for a second, 796. In 1987, at their absolute peak, that's how many Benetton stores were operating across the US. They were everywhere, a true icon of 80s fashion. Now, look at this, 102. That's it. Just a little over a decade later, by 2001, that's how many stores were left. From nearly 800 down to just over 100. It was an absolutely catastrophic collapse. And this chart, wow, it really tells the whole story, doesn't it? It wasn't like a sudden crash overnight. You can see it right there. After that peak in 87, it was just this slow, steady, relentless decline. The brand just couldn't stop the bleeding in the US market. So the big question is, what on earth went wrong? Well, let's go right back to that framework we talked about. Benetton fundamentally misread the American market. They completely misjudged the market forces. They just assumed American shoppers wanted the same things as Europeans. They way underestimated the competitive forces, not seeing the threat from homegrown giants like the Gap. Their super standardized product, with only about 20% of it customized, just didn't connect. And even their stores were wrong. Those small 1,300 square foot boutiques felt tiny next to the massive mall stores Americans were used to. And while Benetton was struggling, these new competitors were just exploding. Take a look at this comparison with Zara. Zara built its entire business on fast fashion adaptation, the exact opposite of Benetton's standardized model. Their supply chain was somehow even faster, and they were building the huge stores that customers wanted. All of a sudden, Benetton's revolutionary model started to look, well, old. So, after all that, this incredible story of a meteoric rise and a stunning fall, what's the big takeaway here? It all comes down to one crucial lesson for any brand that's trying to make it on the global stage. Here's the single most important thing to learn from Benetton's story. Those four forces of globalization, they're not set in stone. They are constantly changing. Market tastes shift, new competitors pop up, governments change the rules. A strategy that makes you look like a genius in one decade can become your biggest liability in the next. Success isn't about finding one perfect formula. It's about constantly analyzing the world and being ready and willing to adapt. And that kind of leaves us with one last question to chew on. Benetton tried to sell this big, global vision of unity, but it ultimately stumbled because it didn't adapt to local market realities. So today, in a world that's dominated by hyper-responsive fast fashion, is there even room for a brand that wants to sell a big, unifying idea? Is that vision a relic of the past, or in our divided world, is it maybe something we need now more than ever? Something to think about. Thanks for joining me.